Yeah, so great to be with you again. Closing out 2020, and nice quiet it's evening here in San Diego. Looks dark where you guys are, and it's uh, it's kind of that end of the year. Evenings are darker earlier. World is quiet. Everybody's in lockdown. Business world is kind of quieted down for me as well. So it's certainly a chance to kind of catch up and recalibrate emotionally and mentally after quite a monumental year in lots of fronts. So as I'd said, the things that were on my mind were sadness and joy and determination, these three, and I'll talk about how I feel like they kind of circle together. But I thought we could start as usual with a bit of meditation, just to settle our mind, but maybe to dwell a bit more on some sense of gratitude and grounding that in the reality of our body and our present circumstances. So as usual, we can just begin by resetting with a deep breath in and out. And then another deep breath, and just invite ourselves to relax. And then another breath, and just asking ourselves what is important right now. And we can pay attention to our surroundings, just beginning to take in some of the information from our body, just feeling our hands and feet and all over our body. The constant flow of information in the present moment. And just paying attention to this instead of whatever other internal discussion may be happening. And so in bringing to mind our body, we can remind ourselves that we are here today because of the kindness of too many people to count. Our parents, teachers, friends, everyone who's been involved in feeding us directly or indirectly throughout our life. Our life is a manifestation of an endless web of kindness. we try to blend. We try to blend and bring together the visceral feeling of our body with the knowledge of what this means. That we are here today, we exist today because of the kindness of countless others. So we pay attention to our body, but at the same time we recall its meaning or understand its significance. Just like when we see an ocean, we can know that all of the water in the ocean comes from streams, rivers, rain, from countless sources. When we see our own body, we can know that this body comes from the kindness of, directly or indirectly, countless others. We can develop a wish to increase our ability to repay the kindness of others by building our good qualities, our peace of mind, our own kind heart, our wisdom. And set this intention. And then with this good motivation, we can relax our concentration and arise from meditation. So on this morning, and then on a number of other mornings over the last year, and I've woken up early with just a lot of sadness in my mind, and um, it caused me to reflect that for some people they wake up with sadness in their mind every day, every morning, and sort of reflecting on the relationship between sadness and tiredness, and the two can play off of each other, and some reluctance to get out of bed, or questioning what are we doing, and so forth. And so all of these are the movements of sadness and depression and tiredness. They're all kind of similarly woven together. You mentioned grief before. These are, the closely related minds, closely related emotions. And so for different people, different sets of emotions will be the main theme for their day, their life, or their week. But for all of us, we sort of go through some versions of these emotions at different times throughout our life, right? So they're themes that sort of come, and they may last for a short period of time. They may last for a longer period of time. They may affect a large group of people. You think about how, especially when whole groups of people experience some calamity together. There's groups of people throughout America experiencing sadness and frustration. There's groups experiencing anger and resentment. There's, and you see these waves, whether they're small for one individual or over a short period of time, or whether they're large, lasting a long time and spreading to lots of people. So the thing with sadness is it's a retreating kind of energy. It's a wanting to just stay resting, to not do anything. It's kind of a hibernating energy, like many of our winters used to have a lot more hibernation before we had electric lights and computers and jobs that never finished. And so sometimes our hibernation period may be now compressed down to a week or two of the year when the holidays come in and nobody is scheduling meetings. So I'm currently enjoying a nice hibernation period at work. Feels a little bit too short, a week and a half, 2 weeks, but anyway. And then when we turn our mind to the news, and we think about, 300, closing in on 350,000 people in the US alone. Sorry, that's right, 350,000 in the US alone dying this year, excess deaths due to COVID, and then so many more around the world. And even if we're fortunate in our immediate circumstances, there's plenty of basis for feeling sadness. And then one of the areas where where my sadness comes up is trying to think, how can I help the people that I'm with, that I work with, that I spend time with? How can I help them to, change their point of view or learn something? And then it's very easy to feel a bit powerless. We've talked about that in the past, wanting to change other people, their political persuasion, for example. That's a tall challenge, deeply embedded. It's like there's certain points of view, political points of view, religious points of view, that get deeply, deeply embedded. And so we can feel a sense of powerlessness in this huge world where we see others who are causing harm, and we want to change, and we think that it's self-destructive, we think it's harming others, but then we feel so little power to help ourselves. And so it's very easy to feel depressed, sad, frustrated, powerless over all of these things. At the same time, a friend of mine sent me a brief note today. He said, "I hope you had a peaceful and joyful holiday." And, straight off of a Hallmark card, right? Peaceful and joyful holiday. And I responded accurately to say, yes, it's been a peaceful holiday, but I think I've forgotten to emphasize joy. But there's still time, so I'll try to see if I can muster some joy. And so joy, in addition to being a bit of a theme, a theoretical theme for these holidays, like you think about what is joy? What's joy? Joy is just like an abundance of naturally flowing emotional energy, right? Like your first grandchild is born, feeling of joy and uplifting, feeling, you're with your friends, maybe on a special vacation, you're out on a boat on the water and you've got the wind in your face. And it's just a feeling of energy and being uplifted and joy. And it's just such a contrast between these two minds. Joy, it doesn't even feel like something you can do. Like if I say to you, be joyful, it's, it's it's not like something feels like something hard for us to muster, but just when the right conditions come together, there's this natural upwelling of joy and happiness and energy. And so we contrast these two, sadness or depression versus joy. We can feel that both of them have some momentum. Both of them feel like they're minds that are not really in our power, but they've got some energy, some life of their own, some momentum, where joy can just carry us from day to day and from project to project and conversation to conversation. And sadness can just keep us in bed, limit our ability to get much done at all, make it feel like everything is impossibly difficult. And so, of course, I think we'd all prefer to just abide in joy all the time, given the choice, right? It's like that feeling of go, right? And it was very American. I don't know, America, especially as land of go. My one teacher that my wife and I like, he said, in England, all of the roads are sort of meandering, and so it's really hard to have a straightforward path to anywhere in England. But in America, right, all the highways are just straight and long. They just dynamite the mountains and just blow right through the mountains and go. Look at these long, straight shots as this country of go, go, go. And the business world's very go, go, go. And so, but sometimes our emotional state doesn't quite line up with that. And the workforce is like, go, go, go. And we just feel like, I don't really want to go. And so it's so important for us to be able to just get a little bit of distance from the emotions and just step back and just be aware of them. Just feel like, oh, there is sadness in my mind. What is this sadness? What is this? It's something like, it's like a natural thing. It is part of nature. It's like a plant or an animal. It's like something out of the wild. It's a natural creature, and there's a huge difference. This is something we naturally do with our language. We tend to say, I'm sad, or I'm depressed, or I'm grieving. But there is a subtle difference, but listen to it, the difference between I'm sad and I'm feeling sadness, or there is some sadness in my mind. I'm sad versus I'm feeling sadness, or there is some sadness in my mind. It's a subtle difference, but it's an interesting difference. One teacher that I like, he said, okay, he was actually a psychotherapist originally by training, and he said people will come to him and they'll say, I'm depressed, and they'll say, are you sure? He said, are you sure? And they say, yeah, I'm sure. So it's like, yeah, 100% sure, 100% sure, totally depressed. So when you say, who is depressed? Well, they say me. And he says, okay, so is it the you that's speaking right now? The you that's telling me they're depressed? Is that the one that's depressed? Or is that some other person that you're referring to, you're thinking of, and that person is depressed? And of course, it just confounds people and confuses them, sort of gets them dizzy and spun around a little bit. But there is this part of our mind that can just notice the different states of mind that are going on. And this is what in modern parlance, people tend to talk about as mindfulness, just having a bit of gap, a bit of distance between those emotions and our sense of self. But it's shockingly powerful to sort of pull yourself off of that flywheel of the emotions and get a bit of distance just to be able to see it as a natural energy. And so if we wake up and there's sadness in our mind, we just think, wow, what is this sadness? Who else is experiencing this? And that's such a powerful thing to do, to just ask who else is experiencing something like this right now. And you just think of so many other people experiencing grief and loss, depression, sadness. And you think, wow, this sadness is actually connecting me with so many other people. And it's such a difference between that point of view and thinking, I'm sad, I'm alone, I'm isolated. And normally when we think I'm sad, it's a small step between that and thinking I'm sad. And implicitly, we're like, nobody else knows what's going on. Nobody can understand. There's a feeling of isolation that's very innate in the story we tell ourselves about who we are. This naturally tends to be an isolated story. But if we have a bit of gap, just thinking there's some mindfulness, we can be aware of that sadness, and we think, who else is experiencing sadness right now? And you think that this sadness is just like some taste of an emotional state that has been experienced, throughout all of time by animals. You think about these whales who carry their dead calf on their back for weeks after it's died. You think about animals experiencing grief. And, it is a very deep state that in fact connects us. All of these states of mind can connect us with others, and so we can feel these states in a peaceful context and in a wise context, and so they don't have to be debilitating. They can in fact unite us with others. And one way to get this distance is just asking ourselves, where do I feel this in my body? Like, where do I feel joy in my body? Where do I feel sadness in my body? One of the effects of that is just helping to realize that it's something very biological. It's something very innate to us that has its own life and has its own momentum. Which kind of brings me to determination. So determination, it's one of these things where my understanding of that mind, that word, has changed a lot. The tradition that I was trained in, we meditated on our meditations. In almost every case, were meditations on a determination. Be determined to do this, determined to be kind, determined to, refrain from negative actions, determined to, meditate on wisdom and impermanence and so forth. And so when I read that, I was kind of like, okay, how can I be determined? And when I was first meditating, I'd like grit my teeth and I'm like, okay, I'm determined. And I just came back after some years away from focusing on that tradition and started reading some of the teachings. And again, just noticing how all pervasive that word is, determination, in that particular tradition of meditation. But if I think about it, the way the meditations are taught is that sorry, fumbling a little bit with the words, but the tradition of meditation in which I was taught, the object of meditation is a determination, is a heartfelt determination. Now that's just in our vernacular. I had a heartfelt determination to do this and that and so forth, but the meaning is actually quite literal. The meaning is you need to feel the determination in your heart. If it is to be an authentic determination. So If you want to be, determined to meditate on a regular basis, whatever, you need to actually feel that in your heart. Now, when you're meditating on the heart, with a sense of what's going on deep in your heart, it's a bit like heart surgery. It requires a bit of care and precision, or a lot of care and precision, because you can do it wrong. You can do it a bit wrong. When you're meditating at the heart, in a sense, what you're doing is you're tinkering with deeper levels of your psychology. So when you first wake up if I wake up in the morning and I feel some sadness, I think, that wasn't there when I went to bed. There must have been something in my dreams. There must have been something deep in my mind that's surfacing, something quite deep. So we talk about heartfelt emotions, but from there are these very, so when we're meditating at the heart, what we're trying to do is access very deep levels of our own ways of thinking and ways of responding. And there's a relationship between meditating on the breath and meditating at the heart, because the breath itself is a kind of determination. It is a life energy. You don't think about your breath, but your body breathes for you. If you try to hold your breath, if you try to not breathe or breathe out and don't breathe in, you'll see your body is fighting to breathe. It's fighting to survive. There's this natural will to live inside our body that is the same, in a sense, the same as a plant's will to live. I don't know if they don't have a conscious will, but there's some determination. I think about these little seeds breaking through concrete, right? Just cracking, the roots of a tree, cracking the sidewalk and sprouts coming up. There is this life force that's just determined to come through no matter what happens. Animals, of course, they may be, hungry and homeless and at risk and barely alive, but they're still determined to try to survive. And so when you're thinking of a determination, you're thinking of accessing this little life energy, this resilient, powerful life energy. And there's a sense in which, if we want to make deep change in our own psychology, if you want to make deep change in our world, you have to learn how to access determination, which is a wish that has a resilience to it, a wish that has a bit of strength, a bit of power to it. And the thing is, we already have a determination, and it is innate in our body, and the very fact that we're breathing indicates that on some level, something in our body is still determined. We're still determined to keep going. We're still determined to survive. But if you want to cultivate a determination, like I am determined to not get caught up in my sadness, but instead to watch it and learn from sadness, learn from grief. And you make that determination and actually want to meditate on that determination to learn from this state of mind instead of being controlled by it. You can bring that into your heart and meditate in such a way that it requires a very gentle touch, not like this gritting of teeth that I was falling into when I was misunderstanding how to be determined. It's more like asking ourselves, what is the determination we already have? What am I already determined to do? What are the things that, like, I'm naturally determined to eat? I'm determined to rest when I'm tired. I'm determined to watch this show on Netflix, when I find some time. I'm determined to do this. We find actually there's so much determination already in our life. We're determined to do so many things that it's almost impossible to deter us from whatever we're determined to do. So what we want to do is we want to tap into that determination and then start to redirect it a little bit gently, because this determination is deep and it's sensitive. And so we're not trying to shame ourselves or guilt ourselves or oppress ourselves into some new way of thinking. What we're trying to do is to gently redirect, like if you were, tying off a plant and trying to get your tomato plants to move in a certain direction. You kind of tie them up here and there. You sort of have to work with them. So we need to work with our natural inclinations. But then, for example, being determined not to get overwhelmed by our sadness, but instead to learn from it. It is a decision, but it's a decision with some resilience. And we can just think, no matter what happens, I'm not going to let myself be overwhelmed by the sadness. Even if I get overwhelmed by the sadness, I'm not going to let that discourage me, because that's one of those things, it's a feedback loop. If you get overwhelmed by sadness, then you think, oh, I knew I was going to get overwhelmed by sadness. And oh, I always get over, and then you give up, and you're sort of giving up that determination. So the point is, no matter how deeply we get into grief, no matter how deeply we get into sadness, no matter how pervasive or common it is, we just think, no problem. That has taught me something. I have learned something about this human experience. I've learned something about grief. I've learned something about depression. I've learned something about isolation and loneliness. How wonderful that I have access to such a powerful and rich and pervasive theme in human experience, in the experience of all beings. We can actually feel fortunate, believe it or not, fortunate, even dare I say it, joyful, to have accessed this emotional store of energy, of sadness. Just feeling we're very fortunate. Maybe we don't go to joy straight away. That's maybe a bit of a stretch for us, but at least we think, I'm very fortunate to be able to know this mind. And now that I know it, I'm determined not to get caught up in it, but just to keep learning. I'm determined to learn from it. I'm determined to use this experience to become a more peaceful person, a more wise person, to a more empathetic person. And so we're sort of gently redirecting these emotions that we experience in a way that is beneficial towards learning, towards empathizing. But to do that successfully over time, and not just one time, occasionally when we were lucky or when we read something inspiring, that's what requires determination. And determination is what you carry outside of a class like this. It's what you carry outside of some inspiring reading. It's what you carry with you. And determination has grit, right? It has that resilience. It has that strength. And we need that grit and resilience and strength. And we need it to be deep in our heart. And so just like performing heart surgery, when we're meditating, we try to feel that just gently deep in our heart, but tying this energy that's already there, this life force that's already there, and thinking this life force that has kept me alive to this day, it is a learning energy. It is the energy of learning. It's the energy of growing. And I'm determined I'm going to learn and grow from sadness. I'm going to take as much as I possibly can from this experience, use it to connect to everyone who's experiencing the same states of mind, and it'll make me stronger and a richer, wiser person. So that's some thought on making use of sadness and combining it with determination. So, all right. So why don't we take a bit of time to try to access that determination? And again, in meditation, and again, here we're blending that sense of a physical state, that sense of a physical awareness of our breathing, and a physical sense with a mental change, mental shift, this mental shift of determination. So, okay, so we can again just take a deep breath in and out, just to relax and reset ourselves. When we relax, it's easier to work with our mind and body. And then as we breathe, just notice this breath. It's been continuing the whole class, through our whole life. Our body is naturally determined. There's a natural resilience. Our body is a fighter. Our body is determined naturally. And if there is any hint or trace of sadness or grief or depression in our mind, we try to ask ourselves, can we feel this in our body? Is there some place in our body where we would feel this emotional state? And just like we can feel an emotion in our body, we know that that emotion is not us. It's just some feeling, whether it's in our body or our mind. It's not us. And then harnessing this natural determination that we already possess in our hearts, this natural life force. We can think, I am determined to learn from sadness. I am determined to learn from grief, to use these to connect myself with others experiencing the same emotions. So we meditate on the determination, which means we keep our attention focused on the determination to keep it alive and to strengthen this determination to learn from sadness and grief. And then we can make a determination to keep this feeling in our mind as we arise from our meditation, and carry this with us throughout all of our activities. Whenever we encounter difficult states of mind, we use them to learn more about ourselves and others. And in this way, increase our capacity to help. Then we can open our eyes and arise from our meditation.